and welcome to this video. Today I'm going to make a tiny diorama inside of this golden nutshell. Now this was originally a Christmas decoration, but it fell and broke, and when I saw this I thought this would be perfect for trying to make a very miniature diorama. And I thought, what kind of tiny diorama inside a nutshell would work best? And I ended up deciding to go with a little mouse in like a foresty scene. So I started by putting a little teardrop shape on a pin, and then I just added a tiny egg shape as the head with some Bake & Bond, and I'm always using my silicone shaper here trying to get the shape right. But this was also so tiny. I struggled super hard when it came to having my camera autofocus. So excuse me for having some, non-recognizable scenes in here, but I really tried my best to keep in focus. It was just so challenging since this mouse basically has the size of one of my fingernails. But yeah, I pre-baked the tiny body for a couple seconds. Actually it was about a minute or so since it was so small. And then I added some legs, again just teardrop shapes that I elongated, then I blended in the hip parts. Made sure to add some Bake & Bond because I knew that it would else not stick. And then I just shaped the legs how I wanted them before baking this tiny little mouse again. I'm not adding extra details to any of these parts. I just want to, have it look like a mouse, but I'm not gonna add any fur texture or anything else considering how small this is and how fragile. I really didn't want to ruin any of the pieces before I could paint it, and especially in painting, I didn't want to add too much detail. Since this is so small, when I painted with my model colors, I knew that certain bit of details would get lost. So yeah, I just spent a decent bit of time smoothing and trying to get the base shape right. But yeah, I know there's a decent bit of people in the miniature world that can do amazing sculptures with amazing amounts of details. I just decided to go this route since I don't sculpt tiny pieces that much, and this was already really challenging and time consuming. So after baking the legs, I added the arms in the same way, just some very elongated teardrop shapes that I added with some Bake & Bond and then blended in with my silicone shaper. As you can see, totally out of focus, and I really struggled to make things work here. But yeah, overall that's practically the base shape done. All this mouse now needs are some ears and a tail. And the tail is literally just a very long vermicelli that I blend in a little bit at the bottom just to make sure that it actually adheres. Again with Bake & Bond, and the ears were some half circles that I just pressed in and then used my ballpoint stylus just to shape them a little. I couldn't make them too thin because I knew they would break off if I did, so I just tried to not go too tiny on them. And the same with the tail, and I made sure to adhere it again with more and more Bake & Bond. This is basically just my security measurement, just so nothing would get ruined or anything else. And by the end of it, I just baked it for 4 to 5 minutes because it's so tiny, and then it was finally time to paint this little guy. I started off with a base coat of white, and then I just added some pink shading on the hands and the feet and the inner ears and the tail, just where it would be on a real life mouse. And then I'm going in with a darker gray just all over the body. I'm adding some white back to the belly later. I just wanted to make a very even tone since the white base coat I used wasn't really that covering, and I had a decent bit of pink that I got everywhere because I'm using a very small brush here, but it's still really hard to not get paint everywhere. You can see like from the size of my small fingernail here in the picture, and like, you know, all of the details on the mouse, how tiny it was. So I was really like happy that I could actually hold it with the pin, because I think without it, it would have been impossible to paint and not smudge like half of the details or break something off. I did actually break off the tip of the tail at some point, like before painting. You can kind of see it a little bit, but it shouldn't be too visible once I'm done with this piece. Now the eyes were challenging, so I actually used like a very fine like pin hook tool to draw them. Just a little bit of black dotted on, and same with the nose, and then, you know, just like trying to blend in a little bit more detail between the gray and the pink parts, just to make sure they look a bit more even. And then I'm letting it dry before using a different brush that is a bit softer and adding a slightly white belly. And I'm trying to blend this in, making it look like a little bit more like fur and a little more rugged, and that's the mouse done. Next up, it was time to focus on the nutshell. And I made a paste out of sand, glue and water with a little bit of brown paint just to tint it first. And I filled in the bottom to like make a little base for the mouse. Then I painted it with some brown paints, just like 2 shades that I dumped on. And then I scoured through my like enormous amounts of miniature supplies, since I'm also very much so into Mother Train stuff and, you know, miniature dioramas. So I had quite a lot to choose from, and I decided to go with some vines that I put in one side of the background, and then I added 3 like very beautiful tiny branches. These are actually branches from a basil plant. I found they work excellently as like small shrubbery, or like, you know, for making like woodland and like brushwork in dioramas, because they have the perfect size and a little bit of detail to make them look like dried up trees or tree stumps. So every time my basil plant just dries out after a year or so, you know, when they usually are 1 year, I just cut them off, dry them a bit more, and then use them in my dioramas. I also added just a little bit of green flocking, but it was really hard to film that. So here you just see the results. I just spread some PVA glue and then just added the flocking. And then I added a like blackish brown wash to the mouse, a little bit to the moss and to the floor, just to give it a little bit more depth and shading. And with that, it was actually done. This may have been a very tiny diorama, and like the diorama part itself, the scenery, was very quick to make, but it took quite a while to get the mouse right. This was actually my 3rd try. And I have to say, I love it. I think it turned out adorably. And I think this would make a perfect like small decoration for like hanging up even outside of Christmas, which is why I didn't know and didn't actually, you know, make any kind of Christmas theme, though you could totally like hang it up on the Christmas tree again. I actually had a lot of fun, and, you know, like these tiny nutshells, you can, you know, you don't have to actually get the ones that are pre-painted for like the Christmas tree. You can just like try and break the nut carefully yourself, and then just use it as a base, and you have like the perfect little like display thing for a tiny diorama. And honestly, like, I really loved the challenge of sculpting this mold. It was super fun. But yeah, in the end, again, I loved the result, and I, you know, loved the process, and I think this is a really good project for if you want to test your skills and test how tiny you can actually sculpt. And of course, as any of these kinds of crafts, you know, you don't have to go with a natural scene. You can put any kind of scene in there as you want. You could even make like a tiny house with a tiny fireplace or something. But anyways, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this project and which kind of scene would you put in a nutshell. And as always, I hope you have a great day. See you next time. Bye bye!